pause of reflection, I concluded that the justice due both to him and my fellow creatures demanded of me that I should comply with his request. Turning to him, therefore, I said, I consent to your demand, on your solemn oath to quit Europe forever, and every other place in the neighborhood of man, as soon as I shall deliver into your hands a female who will accompany you in your exile.
I swear, he cried, by the sun and by the blue sky of heaven and by the fire of love that burns my heart, that if you grant my prayer, while they exist, you shall never behold me again. Depart to your home and commence your labors. I shall watch their progress with unutterable anxiety, and fear not, but that when you are ready, I shall appear.
Saying this, he suddenly quitted me, fearful perhaps of any change in my sentiments. I saw him descend the mountain with greater speed than the flight of an eagle, and quickly lost among the undulations of the sea of ice. His tale had occupied the whole day, and the sun was upon the verge of the horizon when he departed. I knew that I ought to hasten my descent towards the valley, as I should soon be encompassed in darkness, but my heart was heavy, my steps slow. The labor of winding among the little paths of the mountain and fixing my feet firmly as I advanced perplexed me, occupied as I was by the emotions which the occurrences of the day had produced. Night was far advanced when I came to the halfway resting place and seated myself beside the fountain. The stars shone at intervals as the clouds passed from over them. The dark pines rose before me, and every here and there a broken tree lay on the ground. It was a scene of wonderful solemnity and stirred strange thoughts within me. I wept bitterly, and clasping my hands in agony, I exclaimed, "O stars and clouds and winds, ye are all about to mock me. If ye really pity me, crush sensation and memory. Let me become as naught, but if not, depart, depart, and leave me in darkness." These were wild and miserable thoughts, but I cannot describe to you how the eternal twinkling of the stars weighed upon me, and how I listened to every blast of wind as if it were a dull, ugly siroc on its way to consume me. Morning dawned before I arrived at the village of Chamonix. I took no rest, but returned immediately to Geneva. Even in my own heart, I could give no expression to my sensations. They weighed on me with a mountain's weight, and their excess destroyed my agony beneath them. Thus I returned home, and entering the house, presented myself to the family. My haggard and wild appearance awoke intense alarm, but I answered no question, scarcely did I speak. I felt as if I were placed under a ban, as if I had no right to claim their sympathies, as if never more might I enjoy companionship with them. Yet even thus I loved them to adoration, and to save them, I resolved to dedicate myself to my most abhorred task. The prospect of such an occupation made every other circumstance of existence pass before me like a dream, and that thought only had to me the reality of life.
Note the genius of this passage, that at the end of it, Dr. Frankenstein begins to identify with the creation, the monster, in some profound ways. Now, of course, chapter 17 is fundamentally the debate. The monster, the creation, wants love, wants to have a significant other, asks, if you will, for his Eve, to borrow from Milton's Paradise Lost. Notice right away, Dr. Frankenstein refuses. He says, I refuse it. There's no way. Be gone, paragraph 41 on page 593. Be gone, I've answered you. You may torture me, but I will never consent. It will then be the threats versus reason, right, that the monster, the creation, has to decide. And he moves, notice he vacillates between the two. He says, I will, on page 594 and paragraph 42, he says, I will work at your destruction. That is to say, I will kill the creator. And of course, Nietzsche's God is Dead passage, which we have given a lecture on when we talked about Goethe and Faust. We're playing very similar kinds of games here, obviously. The Monster then will come back. I intended to reason, he says, but he says, I indulge in dreams of bliss that cannot be realized, obviously, without love. He asks, please make me happy, he says. And then at paragraph 45, Frankenstein says that I was moved. He says, the argument of reason began to affect him in some way. Where will the monster go with his newly created Eve? To South America to live back in nature, away from all humans. Dr. Frankenstein says, I don't believe you. You're going to return back to humans. And he says, I will leave all humans alone. And yet, when Frankenstein looks at his appearance in paragraph 49, he says, I can't do it. He says, in the end, you cannot keep from malice, from doing mean things to humans. The argument that the monster makes is a fascinating one. He says, if you believe that love is stronger than hatred, then all you have to do is give me love, and I will not hate. This ultimately is the argument to which Frankenstein will consent. Ultimately, he swears that it will happen, and then of course we have the continued promise of the monster. I'll be looking for my Eve. Of course, the Eve is ultimately going to be the heart of the tension between the two of them. And then he's gone. And then we're told in paragraph 55 that Frankenstein's heart is heavy, his steps are slow. He sits down, he weeps, he prays, O stars and clouds and winds, ye are all about to mock me. If you really pity me, crush sensation in memory, let me become as naught, nothing. But if not, depart, depart, and leave me in darkness. And by the time he shows up back at his home, his family members clearly recognize something's fundamentally changed and he's distraught. But Frankenstein, to save them, will begin the consideration of possibly creating a second monster. Well, it's a compelling read. It's a compelling study. A study in self-identification, an important, compelling study in the issues of prejudice and the ways that we are often prejudiced towards others simply because of appearance and the silliness of that. And then, of course, to feel prejudice against oneself often can turn oneself from love to hate and inappropriate action. Finally, as we look at our levels of reading, at 2A for major messages, obviously we mentioned several just now. At 2B, the notion of symbolism comes to play here, as well as, of course, that notion of the idea of reading books as having a profound influence to help one see who one is, but also to create all kinds of mental disequilibrium, consternation. At 3A, well, obviously Paradise Lost is the text that we can equate with this one, as well as any number of other titles that you might want to write down at 3A. What are some other titles where that kind of tension between should I do this act, should I not do this act, and on what grounds? Or how about the text that for you best describes the tension between love and hatred? Is it in fact the case that if people are shown proper love, they won't be bad people, they won't misbehave in terrible ways? Finally, at 3B, it is an intriguing question. What would you do if you were Dr. Frankenstein, given the arguments presented here? Would you create a mate for him? And if so, why? If not, why not? Of course, the idea is, as we've said in other lectures on this novel, the idea is that the creation represents in many ways symbolically technology, right? That is to say, yes, we can split the atom, yes, we can weaponize it, but the question is, should we use it to end the Second World War? Still to today, there's tremendous debate about this. Yes, we can create a cell phone, a smartphone, but is it a good idea that we have this kind of powerful technology in the hands of young people and even children? Is that a good thing? Can it in fact be controlled? This will be at the heart of the debate. Well, there you go. Mary Shelley's genius text, Frankenstein. Thank you.